All right, we have time for a couple of questions or comments or thoughts. Yeah.
Seems to fulfill your be programmed model. How do you see social networking of the future breaking away from this current programming paradigm which Facebook seems to be determining? In other words, how do you see the future of social networks evolving, and what programming directives do you see as being imperative looking forward?
Hey Doug, are you on Facebook, by the way?
I'm not. My name is, the author Douglas Rushkoff is. I'm in this room. The future of Facebook is that Facebook will go away, right? AOL went away, Friendster went away, MySpace went away, Orkut went away. They all go away. The future of social networking, if and when it happens and sticks, is going to be a peer-to-peer, client-side, distributed social networking mesh, right? That'll actually allow for the kinds of things people want out of Facebook, but not the but without depending on a centralized server in order to do that. And I think that will happen. I still, on my brighter days, I still have an optimistic evolutionary vision of where the technology brings us. I do think that the internet and Facebook and social networking and all the fear and the loss of privacy and all are precursors to a world in which we are much more intimately connected to one another. You know, whether that's biologically or telepathically or whatever it is, I do think there is some kind of a networked future for humanity if we're going to survive this thing. Meaning the next, survive the next 100 or so years. So I look at Facebook as just one little step along the way towards a more distributed way of sharing.
Anybody else in the back?
Oh, Debbie Steyer, it's going to be a hard one.
Hi, Doug. Thanks. That was great. Will you talk a little bit about your most recent publishing experience in comparison to the traditional trade houses that you've published with?
The trick is this. My most recent publishing experience was more pleasant in most respects, right? Because it was little, small, and John Oakes is a friend of mine from college and all that. And basically the idea is sell as many as they can through orbooks.com and don't do all the other distribution stuff so they can keep a bigger piece of the pie. The problem with that, of course, is as a propagandist, I want to pump the most books out there. So for me as a writer, I'd rather sell 100,000 books at a dime a pop than, 1,000 books at $10 a pop. They obviously would rather sell fewer books at more because it's just less wear and tear on the system, and it's easier, it's cheaper, it's a higher, you always want a higher margin, and if you can, there's an equation. So we end up, it's interesting, we end up in with slightly different priorities. And it's tricky. The ideal business situation is one where the two parties' priorities are perfectly aligned, and they're not yet in this. So it sort of feels like if I've already got some audience, if I have a blog or a thing or this, what's the advantage then to going with an indie publisher over than just totally indie? What if I just go with one of these, like Seth Godin's kind of, let me just sign up with Amazon. It's interesting. If writers are individuals, if we are individuals rather than parts of groups, if we don't have a posse, if it's just me against the world, then I should go and suck at the teat of one of the great corporations, ideally not four of them, right? You don't want to suck at HarperCollins and Barnes & Noble and Amazon and this, because then everybody's extracting value along the way with ICM and this one and that one. It's just a book. How many corporations can live off this thing? But if you're an indie, if you're like a Seth Godin or someone, you can just go to Amazon, print on demand, or one of these little things and just say, oh, here's the Kindle, here's the this, here's the that, market it, and you get all the money. I mean, the next book I'm doing with, we just signed, I'm doing with Penguin. You know, I mean, I don't see, I don't see the sense in writers saying, okay, I'm off traditional publishing and now I'm in indie and I'm going to do this. It's not about drawing a line in the sand. It's about finding the right tool for the job. So for this job, the right tool was an independent publisher, because I wanted it out this year and not 2 years from now, because it's a small book, because it's a book that's about peer-to-peer media and peer-to-peer technology, and I wanted to do it in a peer-to-peer fashion. There's a lot of reasons. So it was the right kind of book to do in this way, right? There's another book I want to do, which I want to get, and it's just hard. I need it reviewed in Kirkus and PW and the Times, you know, and that's an easier sell when you've got a corporate imprint, because corporations kind of recognize each other, and so it's like, okay, I'm going to do it, and I want a book that has a longer way, a longer process, you know. So I'm going to do that way, and I'm sure I'm going to do indie books and all kinds of other things. So I'm lucky in that I still have a choice. You know, I think that in some ways it's going back to a model where there are certain kinds of gatekeepers will be of benefit to everyone who cares most about this stuff. And it's hard to almost talk about that publicly, because it seems like it's against the revolution. But the revolution is not about, the revolution, as such as it is not about making money off books. Right? Making money off books is what we do to stay alive right now. That's not the revolution, that's something else. So I think I'm writing books about the revolution, right? But I'm not always going to use revolutionary means to distribute it, because, like the gentleman from FSG, I got health insurance to pay.
We have to leave it there. Doug
All right,
Rushkoff,
thanks.
everyone.